Hamas's political leader, Ismail Haniyeh, its chief negotiator in all of the hostage talks and a resident of Qatar, was assassinated early this morning in Iran's capital, Tehran. Just hours after meeting with the country's supreme leader, both Hamas and Iran are blaming Israel for the killing and vowing revenge. Israel has not commented. Israel did acknowledge yesterday the responsibility for the targeted assassination Tuesday of the Hezbollah commander in Lebanon after accusing the terror group of killing 12 children Saturday in the Israeli-held Golan Heights. In an interview with Channel News Asia in Singapore today, Secretary of State Tony Blinken was asked about the assassination of the Hamas leader and the risk of all-out war with Iran, the sponsor of both Hamas and Hezbollah.
Now, again, the best way to bring the temperature down everywhere and to put us on a better path is through a ceasefire in Gaza. That will have, I think, important effects on other areas where you could see conflict, whether it's in the north of Israel and Lebanon, whether it's Iran, whether it's in the Red Sea.
It also raises the question of just how ceasefire negotiations and hostage talks can continue without Haniyeh, and whether there would be any retaliation against hostages there, with the terror group's military commander, Yahya Sinwar, leading the remaining terror battalions from a tunnel somewhere in Gaza. Joining me now from Tel Aviv is NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez. Raf, I cannot think of a more consequential 48 hours in your part of the world since October 7th and 8th. And it's just stunning in what it shows you Israel is capable of doing, and certainly that was the message. They could have killed Haniyeh in Cairo, in Istanbul, in Qatar. And instead, in Tehran, where they're all gathering for the inaugural of the new president of Iran, I mean, it's certainly telling Iran, look, we can come and get you if we want.
I think that's exactly right, Andrea. This was a very, very clear message to Iran. And remember, this was not just a brazen assassination carried out in the heart of the Iranian capital, but they killed Ismail Haniyeh, Hamas's political chief, just hours after he was shaking hands with Iran's supreme leader, another avowed enemy of Israel. So this is extremely embarrassing for Iran that they were unable to keep such a high-profile figure safe in the heart of their own capital city. And that's why you're seeing Khamenei, Ayatollah Khamenei, you're seeing him on your screen there, saying Iran at this point has a duty to take revenge against Israel. Now, you mentioned the Israeli government refusing to comment one way or another, so most of what we know about this killing is from Iranian state media. But about 1:45 a.m., a missile strike hitting Haniyeh's residence in Tehran, according to Iranian state media, killing both him and his bodyguard. And Andrea, you mentioned the implications here for these very fragile ceasefire negotiations are potentially profound. We just interviewed the grandson of an 84-year-old Israeli hostage who has been held in Gaza for 299 days. His name is Oded Lifshitz, and his grandson told us he's deeply concerned that this killing could derail those talks. He said that he hopes the United States, Qatar, Egypt will be able to keep these ceasefire talks going, but there is a major diplomatic effort ahead of Secretary of State Blinken as he's traveling in Asia, not even in the Middle East, to try to keep these prospects of ceasefire negotiations going. There had been some optimism from the White House that we could be in the closing stages of these talks, but the killing of one of Hamas's lead negotiators, at minimum, is going to complicate those talks. Andrea.
And big questions as to what the U.S. role is going to be did they get a heads up? Do they support it? You know, importantly, the U.S. signaled its support to defend Israel from Iran's attack in February, you know, with multiple air defense and missiles. But now it's just so complicated. It's, as you point out, we don't know what the retaliation is going to be, when and where, but they have a lot. They have their proxies everywhere, including in Yemen. Red Sea attacks. Thank you so much, Raf. Appreciate it. Joining me now to sort through all of this, Richard Haass, President Emeritus of the Council on Foreign Relations, the author of the Substack weekly newsletter, Home and Away. Well, the home part is complicated right now by an American election, but the away part is really complicated. Richard?
even for the Middle East, Andrea, this is complicated. It's almost gotten to the point where it's hard to tell what's the action and what's the retaliation. And you've got it across multiple fronts between Israel and the Houthis. We saw the attack on Tel Aviv the other day, the Israeli response. You've got the situation in Lebanon. Probably, 70,000 Israelis can't live in their homes in the north. Maybe at least that many or more Lebanese can't live in the south of their country. That's an untenable situation for any Israeli government, I would say. You've obviously got the situation in Gaza, and shall we say the rather strange circumstance where Israel has targeted the leader of the Hamas delegation. This is yet another signal that getting the hostages back is anything but a priority for this Israeli government. They are focused on going after Hamas, even though the idea of eliminating Hamas, I think, is a physical and political impossibility. So you don't have a lot to work with. I think Tony Blinken was right, though. The least bad approach is to somehow think about how do you resurrect the idea of a ceasefire in Gaza, because that might calm things down. But I think what it's going to require would be Israel putting something new on the table or showing new flexibility. And one other thing I should have mentioned, I think the Iranians are going to feel compelled to retaliate, as you heard, the idea of revenge. Well, the last time this happened in April, Iran sent several hundred drones and missiles at Israel. Somehow none managed to kill anybody. Well, if they do the same thing again, it's quite possible someone in Israel would be killed. Then I think you're looking at large-scale retaliation. So as bad as the Middle East has been, I actually think things have moved to a point where it's far more dangerous.
And we just learned that the Prime Minister is going to give a speech in about 10 minutes after 1, in about an hour from now. And most likely it would be in Hebrew, I would think, but we'll have a translation. But he took a very hard line when he was here before the joint meeting of Congress, that's for sure, and in other conversations that he had along the way. And then, of course, the administration was represented by Kamala Harris. Importantly, that Thursday, she delivered the only statement and emphasized the defense of Israel and its right to defend itself, but also emphasized the devastation in Gaza. And I, as you know, spent a lot of time with the hostage families, and they were so hoping for something out of their meeting with Netanyahu, and they don't feel that they got it. In fact, they thought that the fact that he was here for a week and basically they brought it back their negotiators, so there were no talks all last week, that every day that goes by without their loved ones being rescued or released, is just perilous, to say the least. So one question is going to be what the American response is, Richard.
Look, I think the American response is it's going to be to focus on somehow seeing if you can resurrect these talks over Gaza. Because I don't think we can, prevent Israel from moving into the north unless there's a diplomatic initiative there, one way or another. It's got to be possible for Israelis to go back to their homes in northern Israel. That's either going to happen diplomatically or Israel's going to launch a major military offensive. So I think the administration is going to try to see if there's anything to be done between Israel and Hezbollah and possibly with Iran on the north. At the same time, whether they can resurrect the talks with Hamas after the assassination. Both of these are long shots, though. Let's be honest. Both of these are now long shots. So, I don't mean to be be spouting pessimism here, but if people aren't seriously concerned about escalation along several fronts, and we haven't even talked about the West Bank, if people aren't concerned, they're not paying close attention. This is about as dangerous as it gets.
No, absolutely. And Hezbollah had said that if there were a ceasefire in Gaza, they would observe it. And they did last time. All of the proxies did, including the Houthis in Yemen. So if they were on the brink of a ceasefire deal, and I think from the Israeli side there were objections to a number of things, and from the Hamas side, it's too simplistic to say that it was done, because even the American optimists said that there were very important details to be worked out from both sides. But it was certainly there for the grabbing, and they thought that they could close it. And Bill Burns had gone back to Rome just this Sunday to at least begin to get it started again. Is back here now. But I don't see how the talks get back to the table. Just Qatar, who is basically the mediator with Hamas, how can they do that when they have been presumably embarrassed by someone who is their protectee being killed in Tehran.
Look, I hear you, and I don't disagree with the word you said. What worries me more, though, more than Gaza right now, because Gaza, in a funny sort of way, most of the military activity that's going to happen has happened. We're probably now looking at a low-level, open-ended, almost grind. I'm more worried right now about the north, a major escalation there, or something directly between Israel and Iran. And those, to me, have opened up as two fronts, potentially. That is, as bad as Gaza has been, I think now we've got to focus more on the other two situations. One of the rules I have in the Middle East, Andrea, is situations get worse before they get even worse. And I worry that that's where we're getting to right now, that there's multiple fronts, and it might be more than the diplomatic circuits can handle, given the parties involved and the politics involved. And the administration has limited leverage at this point. Let's be honest. We don't control things. Israel didn't warn us, I would bet, about these assassinations. Certainly not the one in Iran. So the administration is trying to influence events, but it does not and cannot control events.
And I just want to point out for our viewers, some who might not know, Richard, you were very deeply involved in all these negotiations in the past decades. You know exactly how this thing often goes down. Thank you so much for being here today.